coming back at you with some more training all about nutrition. On today's topic, we are talking about carbs and fat, specifically carb and fat ratios. Now, I do apologize in advance because I am suffering with a tiny little bit of man flu, so I'm braving this. I know, I am a martyr. I am someone who's just toughing it out. Man flu is the worst disease known to man, but I am battling it out to bring you high quality content as always, because the podcast show must go on. The live training must go on. You need this nutritional information more than I need to go back to my bed and rest up with man flu. So let's crack on and let's talk about carb and fat ratios and how much they matter for fat loss. Because let's start way back at the beginning. You know by now, if you've been listening to me for any period of time, that we know about the calorie deficit. We know that managing energy balance and consuming fewer calories than your body burns is what matters most in order for you to get some weight and fat loss. That's the overarching principle that hopefully by now I've drilled and smashed into your brain. Whether you like it or not, you are accepting of the fact that that's where you need to start. 99.99999% of all your progress will come from that management of energy, the management of your calorie deficit. Maybe that statistic was slightly made up, so don't quote me on that, but it's probably, roughly speaking, roundabout true, or it's at least where you should put your attention, let's put it that way. So once you've got that in place, you understand that calories are the most important thing. You've probably then gone on to focus on protein, maybe to help you build some muscle, preserve muscle that you've already built, maybe to help you feel fuller for longer, all of those different sorts of good things that are going to help you on your journey. You focus on protein. So then you've ticked that box. So you tick box number 1, which is calorie and energy balance. You tick box number 2, which is protein intake. You've got that down pat. Now you're thinking, what's next, Simon? What's the next thing on the agenda that I've got to focus in on to make as much progress in the shortest possible time frame with my weight and fat loss? So now you're starting to think, well, what about carbs and what about fat? I've heard over here that this keto dude says that low carb, high fat turns me into a fat burning furnace. I've heard that carbohydrates spike insulin, and then therefore that shuts off the body's ability to burn fat. Therefore, if I don't have carbohydrates, that must mean that I'm just constantly burning fat. That's going to be awesome, right? Let's go do that. Then you realize that actually carbs are fucking good for you in terms of making you feel good, because all the good shit's got carbs in it, really, hasn't it? Now, I'm not against a keto diet by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. I am agnostic to any type of diet. So if you want to do keto, if it's right for you, it fits your lifestyle, it fits your food choices, cool, great, go for it. What I'm here to do is give you the actual information so you can make a logical decision. Now, others on the flip side of this argument will say that a high fat diet is bad for your health. They'll talk to you about cholesterol, they'll talk to you about saturated fats being bad for you, particularly maybe animal fats being bad for you, and therefore a high fat diet that is basically then going to be negative in terms of your health benefits. So you've got this kind of tug of war going on. You've got keto dude that says high fat, and then you've got this sort of anti-high fat dude who they're kind of competing against each other. You're stuck in the middle. You don't really know what the fuck to do. And you're also wondering, does it even fucking matter? Does it matter whether I have this amount of carbs, that amount of fat, whether I change it day to day, whether I keep it the same? Do you even care? Should you even care? So let's talk about that. So after calories and protein, the most important thing you should really focus on is adherence. That being your adherence to that calorie deficit, because you want to adopt the way of dieting that is going to be most suited to you. Now, that really kind of overrides anything about carb and fat ratios. So that's the first thing that I want you to take away. And it's the main point of this whole thing, is that carb and fat ratios for fat loss make no difference whatsoever. If you're the type of person that likes high fat foods, cool, go for it. As long as you're hitting your calorie deficit targets, perfect, fine, fill your boots. If on the flip side, you are someone that likes bread, pasta, potatoes, carbohydrate heavy foods, cool, great. As long as you're hitting your calorie deficit, go for it. It's kind of going to be the exact same results, because that's the overriding point, is the calorie deficit is really going to be what drives your progress, what drives your progress towards weight loss, towards fat loss. So if you are sacrificing that to go do keto and you're not sticking to a calorie deficit, then boom, that keto diet is going to do no greater things for you. It's actually just going to be worse for you because you're going to overeat. So that's the real thing that you want to stick to there. That carb and fat ratio does not matter. Having said that, fat is quite important in your diet. You need a minimum amount of fat for proper hormone function, immune function, plus other different things. You need fat in your diet in order to survive, in order to live. So you should never cut fat out completely. Now, there's a bit of a kind of debate as to what level you should have fat in your diet in terms of a minimum amount. My just general recommendation is whatever your total calorie number is that you're intaking for the day on average, make sure that you've got a minimum of around about 20 to 25% of that as fat, roughly speaking. No hard and fast rules on that one, but I would say that that's where I would ballpark most of my clients, 20 to 25% fat as a minimum. From there, you can have as much fat as you want. So if that, let's say 25% brings you out at 50 grams of fat per day, you can go right up and double that if you want to 100 grams of fat per day. If it still fits within your calorie requirement, you can absolutely do that if that fits your food choices. So if you like your avocados, your eggs, and various other different high fat foods, and that makes you happy, and that helps you to stick to a calorie deficit, then cool, go for it. Fill your proverbial boots. But if you like carbohydrates, don't feel like you are missing out on any extra fat loss or weight loss by having more carbohydrate in your diet and keeping that fat level to like 20, 25%. Because although carbs aren't necessarily essential for life like fat is, they still have a huge amount of benefits. So for example, it's your body's preferred choice of energy. So if you've got carbohydrates in your body, then your body is going to use that as its primary source for fuel. So it could help you to have better workouts. It helps you to have metabolic flexibility, which basically means that when you are doing various different things, your body is deciding which fuel source to use to fuel that particular activity. And it will switch between the two constantly. So whether that's from fat, whether it's from carbohydrates, your body will constantly be switching. So for example, when you're at rest, maybe you're sleeping, then your body is going to use fat predominantly as its energy source. Not much of it because you can be asleep. But when you are doing a high intensity exercise, carbohydrates are going to be what the body wants to call on to fuel that particular exercise. So it makes sense that if you are, doing those particular sorts of exercise, you're not restricting yourself on that, because what can happen is if you're not metabolically flexible, your body can't switch between those two fuel sources as it needs to fuel those particular forms of exercise. So bear that in mind. Also, carbs, generally speaking, you can get quite a few high fiber carb options, which is going to help with gut health, which is going to help with digestion and just overall health. So there is some benefit to carbs, even though they aren't essential to keep you alive. But as I always say, is there's one thing to say, well, we don't have to have this in order to live, but often we're talking about we want to optimize health. We want to optimize training performance. We want to optimize body composition, all these different sorts of things. So we have to kind of look beyond what we need in order to live. We are thinking about more than that in terms of our nutrition. Also, in terms of carbohydrates, people will talk about insulin spikes. They will talk about when you have carbs, your insulin spikes up. That's bad because it shuts off the body's ability to burn fat. Now, that is exactly what happens. When your insulin spikes, your body then goes through a process to basically reduce or return insulin levels back to where they were, blood glucose levels back to where they were. Now, what it does to do that, it does stop burning fat in that process to do that. However, across the course of a day, if you are in a calorie deficit, then what will happen is your body will spend periods of time where those insulins aren't spiking, and therefore it will effectively bring you out at the same result whether you're having carbohydrate or not. And think about it as well. People who are on keto diet will say they're a fat burning furnace. Now, obviously, they are burning fat for fuel, but they are eating more fat as well. So they're consuming more fat. So they're using that as fuel as well. And so you've got to bear that in mind. So calorie for calorie diets, so a 2,000 calorie keto diet versus a 2,000 calorie, say, quote unquote, normal diet, is going to be exactly the same in terms of weight and fat loss. If that person has a deficit of 2,000 calories, is really making no difference. And insulin spikes are a normal part of being healthy. It's a normal part of the process. It's nothing to be feared. It's nothing negative. It's nothing that's going to kill you or destroy your fat burning opportunity. As long as you are in a calorie deficit, it really doesn't matter. And also, whey protein also is, as an example, spikes your insulin levels. So it's not necessarily just carbohydrates that does this. Carbohydrates are not the devil in this process. If you like carbohydrates, eat carbohydrates, because it really makes zero difference. If you like keto and that is the diet that helps you adhere to your calorie deficit, then go do that. Because what you want to come out with at the end of all of this that I've just talked through is the imprint in your brain that the calorie deficit is still the most important thing. And your adherence to that calorie deficit is the most important thing of all. If you want to do that through keto and you're happy, you don't crave carbohydrate foods, and it keeps you happy, it keeps you healthy, go do that. But if you want to have a more varied diet, if you want to incorporate carbohydrates, you don't want to restrict food, cool, go do that. So to sum this all up, the ratio between carbs and fat does not matter one jot for fat loss. So I don't care what any sort of keto zealot will tell you. I don't care what any sort of anti-high fat dude will tell you. The ratio just does not matter for fat loss. It does kind of matter for building muscle. Now, you probably wouldn't want to go into a muscle building phase, i.e. a calorie surplus, doing a keto diet. Now, I'm sure there's a bunch of people out there who say that, well, I've done this and it's been great and it's been awesome and I built muscle on a keto diet. Cool, great for you. But I'm talking about what's optimum for most people. And that's going to be a more carbohydrate heavy diet. So still, you could go anywhere between sort of like 20 to 40% of total calories of fat. So that's still quite a high volume when you're in a calorie surplus. 40% of your calories coming from fat as a top end would be quite a high number. Now, the reason why I would suggest not going over that is because that in a surplus, there's a greater propensity for you to add body fat with the higher percentage of fat in your diet. Also, you really want to focus in on training performance when you're in a calorie surplus, because you want to create this most optimum environment for you to build muscle. That's the particular goal that you're after. Now, to build muscle, you are going to need a training stimulus. That training stimulus is obviously going to be your weight training, and the more weight training, the more intense weight training you can do without going into overtraining territory, the more benefit you're going to get from that, the more adaptation you're going to get from that. Now, carbohydrates being the body's main source and preferred source for fuel is going to help that process more than a high propensity for fat in your diet. So that would be the reason why. So firstly, for training performance, and secondly, for limiting the amount of body fat that you increase in that surplus. But still, 20 to 40% of your calories coming from fat is still quite a high number. It's maybe not quite keto, where you're going to the 60+% of your total calories from fat, but it's still a pretty decently high amount. So bear those things in mind. So for fat loss, carb and fat ratio, doesn't matter, do whatever you want, whatever helps you to stick to your diet, and feel free to change it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to suit what food preferences you're having or you prefer, or what's in front of you, or where you're at, whether you're out with family, with friends, or at restaurants. And you can feel free to flex all of your different ratios day to day, week to week, whatever you want. When you drift into a calorie surplus and you're really focusing specifically on building muscle, Focus on what's going to get the most out of your training. That's likely to be having carbohydrate in your diet to a certain degree. But if you are a fan of high fat foods, I would kind of recommend you go anywhere between that 20 to 40% when you're in that calorie surplus to be optimal. Of course, you can build muscle when you're going into a keto diet. If you're having enough protein, you're having enough training, then yes, you can build muscle. But personally, from what I've seen in research, is that would be the most optimal way to do it. Cool. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, okay, Simon, I get this carb and fat ratio, but have you got any sort of free guides or free resources to help me pull this all together? Well, I fucking have, my friend. I fucking have. Now, what you can do is you can click the link in the little commentsy bit, the little show notesy bit, and there's going to take you through to a free Kickstarter pack, a Lean Life Kickstarter pack. Now you're going to say, well, Simon, what's in this free fucking Kickstarter pack? Well, my friend, if you are a beginner, so a beginner with less than 2 years experience in the gym, I'm going to give you a free 4-week training program. I say beginner because, you know, if you're intermediate and advanced, it's going to be a little bit basic for you. So this is free 4-week training program. Then what I'm going to do on day 2, I'm going to send you a nutrition guide. That nutrition guide is going to tell you how to calculate how many calories you need in order to achieve your goals. So whether you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced, that's going to be a useful resource. Then over the course of the next 5 days after that, I'm going to send you more free guides, like how to conquer those uncontrollable cravings, how to live leaner at work, because obviously that's a point where you go off track and kind of things get fucked. Then you're going to give you some free recipe guides and a load of other cool shit, including, I think, a guide on how to meal prep. I think that's there. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. So all you need to do is click that link, go there. It's all for free. It's all yours. And then you can download that and enjoy it. If you are a beginner, recommend you get straight onto that training program. It's going to be pretty awesome. There's a video for each of the exercises that's in there. There's a workout tracker in there. You can download it all to your heart's content and basically start to look fucking awesome over the course of the next 4 weeks. Cool. So I hope that helped. I hope you download those guides and I hope they help you out. If you want to come and say hi to me, then come find me on Instagram. My username is @iron_paradise_fitness. Always happy to talk to anybody that watches, listens to any of my content. Hopefully it helps you. I really want to know what the issues that you have are, whether it's training, nutrition, mindset, anything like that. I want to be making content that really gets to the heart of your issues. So drop me a message on Instagram or drop me an email and say, Simon, can you do a podcast on this? Can you do a live training on that? Because this is where I'm struggling the most. Because I want to make this podcast, these trainings, absolutely 100% yours and really get into the root cause of your issues. So feel free to drop me a message. I'm a very nice person to talk to. I promise I won't swear at you unless you tell me I'm a tool, and then I might swear at you. Okay, so until next time, all I'll say is keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next one.